1 week after 3 teams in the top 5 fell on the same day, you think that this schedule might restore a little bit of calm and order. You know better than that. You're a college football fan. Glad to have you with us on the College GameDay Podcast. Rece Davis and Pete Thamel, delighted to be back on the pod after taking Monday off. A lot of you may know because Pete broke the news, so to speak, on College GameDay at Penn State last week that my daughter Elizabeth and her now husband Nate got married on Sunday. And Pete was gracious enough to break the news on Saturday, which meant the world to my family and especially to Nate's family. They were thrilled, big Colorado Buffalo fans. So it helped ease the sting with what happened to the Buffs later that night.
Yeah.
But Pete, you and I got to chat briefly at the wedding. You know how those things
Sure.
go. But the one thing, we were up taking family pictures, and I see Pete striding up from the garden area of the cocktail area, and my first thought is somebody's getting fired, or something's happening. You didn't really have phone to ear, but you had that intent, best newsbreaker in all of college football, which you are, stride going, and I was like, oh, something's happening right now. Did something happen during my daughter's wedding? And I don't know the answer to this. I'm asking you.
So Sam Pittman got fired on the ride. We were at a beautiful rest stop on I-90 when Sam Pittman's run came to an expected but inglorious end. So I was preoccupied by a phone call, and numerous of our colleagues who were there were very amused. Our old colleague, David Pollack, started poking fun at my wife, Kate, because he saw me disappear into the trees to make a phone call. So it turned out I got a call from a friend of my parents that was just like out of the blue. And I saw it and I was like, either my dad and I have the same name. We're both Pete Thamel, Peter Thamel. Mm-hmm. So I said, either this person called the wrong Peter Thamel and is confused, or something's pretty wrong, because they wouldn't just be calling it. So I bolted away to go make the phone call just to be sure it wasn't B, and it wasn't. I want to be clear about that. But that's probably why I had the game face on. But it was a fairly quiet Sunday afternoon as those things go. On the ride back, we pulled over to break the news that the Arkansas defensive staff had been fired. So the college football gods, Rece, blessed you karmically with a news-free Sunday afternoon wedding bubble around Elizabeth and Nate.
It was a wonderful day. It was great to have a lot of obviously family and tons of friends. We were delighted that you and Kate were able to come. Pollock, when Pollock came up, and Pollock said, "Sorry, homie, I'm not wearing a tie." And I was like, "Hey, brother, you know what?" I said, "Any other time I'd get on to you, but David Pollock is one of what I call my mat carriers. If you don't know what that is, look it up. It's not for this podcast, for another one." So I was like, "For you, you can wear the T-shirt and the jacket. You're good. I'm just glad you're here." We were glad you guys are here, and we're glad that another college football weekend is coming. Man, you know what, Pete? I'm fascinated, and I know that the perception has changed a little bit about Miami and Florida State, given what happened to the Seminoles last Friday night at Virginia. And I don't want to take anything away from Virginia. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was a gutsy. They've improved so much. Mm-hmm. They've improved so much. And they stayed in there and they fought, and both teams had turnovers. Virginia able to take advantage of them. They made big plays in the big moment. This is the thing you accused me of doing. It was a bit of a fluke in my judgment. I mean, everything kind of went Virginia's way. Mm-hmm. And the reason I bring it up is because there has been a little bit, I try not to pay much attention to the reaction to how I rank the teams. I think it's a snapshot. I think you should move teams around and try not to validate your predictions. You are trying to reflect what you see.
Sure.
Case in point, Ole Miss. Mm-hmm. I had major skepticism about Ole Miss, even after the Arkansas game.
Sure.
Thought they got a little lucky to win the Arkansas game. Mm-hmm. Major skepticism about Ole Miss. They've turned in really good performances. They're dangerous. I've got them, I think, at number 6 now. Florida State, I didn't drop much. Okay. But mostly because they still have the win over Alabama.
Sure.
It was a close game in overtime. There was a little bit of a fluky nature to it, and I kind of looked at it and said, at this point, now here we are as we're talking first day of October. Do I really think those teams are better than Florida State right now. Maybe they'll prove to be.
Sure.
Right now, the answer is no, I don't.
Yeah.
And, for all of the people, now, if you think Alabama is better than Florida State, I would question that. It's only been a month, but if you think that, I'm fine with Alabama being ranked in front of Florida State. All the people throwing up their hands and going crazy over it. My question is, why don't you have Virginia ranked ahead of Florida State?
Well, sure.
Because if you're going to do that, that's what you have to do. If you're going to say they won the game, Virginia won the game. I don't think Virginia's better than Florida State. I have Virginia ranked, but below Florida State despite the head-to-head. So
where did you end up with Alabama and Florida State in your final
Florida
poll?
State one notch ahead of Alabama.
Florida State one notch. Okay, I think that's perfectly reasonable. Yeah,
because I think that I think they deserve that for right now. It doesn't mean now. By the way, it doesn't mean it has to be that way in late November.
Sure,
they have the same record. If you think one team's better in November than they were in September, and you have a head-to-head to deal with, you should not ignore it.
Yeah,
it should be considered and evaluated. And this is more for the committee than for AP poll voters. You should evaluate it. It should carry significant weight, but it doesn't have to carry all the weight. It doesn't have to be the be-all, end-all, because there's a whole thing now that if you go through, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that Old Dominion's better than Georgia.
Oh, you can go through it. Yes,
you can go. I think it. Okay, you
not your favorite freight line, but the school.
No, not my favorite
Virginia.
freight line, which is better than all of the freight lines. But I think if you go through what it is like, Old Dominion beat Virginia Tech.
Yes,
who beat NC State.
Correct.
Who beat Virginia.
Yep.
Who beat Florida State, who beat Alabama, who beat Georgia.
Yes.
So if head-to-head's everything for you, I want to know why you don't have the Monarchs ahead of Georgia.
Ricky Ronnie keeping promises.
That's right. That's right. Ricky Ronnie helping the Monarchs keep promises. But so that's the rankings portion of the talk. Florida State leads the nation in offense, in total offense right now. I think Miami is the best team right now. Ohio State may change that soon, but at this moment, I think Miami's the best team, and I think this is going to just be a tremendous game in Tallahassee Saturday night.
Well, one of the great parts of college football, Rece, is when old rivalries are renewed in like a new prism. These teams have obviously been playing each other, but it would be interesting to go back and see if this is the highest stakes ACC matchup since these teams started. There was probably one or two others, but for a league that was re-engineered in the early 2000s around Miami and Florida State, essentially winning the league or meeting in the conference title game eventually, we have had a just distinct lack of top 15, top 20 high stakes, big, looming things on the line for these programs. So I am excited. I love rivalries where there is genuine hatred. And these are two very different schools in two very different places with two very different student bodies. And they don't have a lot in common other than they happen to be in the state of Florida on very opposite ends. So I think it's sort of they're the perfect foils for each other. And I'm happy to see them on a big stage this weekend and excited to hear that chop resonate again, to wake up some of those echoes that we obviously had 2 seasons ago, and have a very fit Miami team, to use a soccer term, come in great on the offensive lines, quarterbacks playing as well as anybody in the country. And it's a huge challenge for Miami to go into that cauldron.
It is, but boy, after the way Virginia moved the ball on Florida State through the air, And look, Carson Beck has been a lot better with short passes than down the field. Some of the percentages downfield. I think he's below 50% on throws 10 yards or more down the field, but he leads the ACC overall, completing 73% of his passes. He's a veteran guy. He's been around, obviously, and he's played well in the right moments this year. I think the most fascinating thing about this game, if you look at the PFF grades, I think among defensive ends ranked 1 and 3 are Ruben Bain and Hakeem Mesidor in terms of the way they've played. Tommy Castellanos is a dangerous, elusive, tough to get your hands on, and then he's perfect for the Malzahn offense because he does that and he takes shots down the field where he's been very effective on deep shots. If anybody is built to keep him inside the pocket, make him beat you from inside the pocket, and talented, athletic enough to get him on the ground, which is a whole different problem once you make contact with him, it would be those guys at Miami. I think Miami matches up defensively very well with the Castellanos scramble portion of it. Now maybe Gus is going to get all the rest of them blocked and trick them and misdirection and all of that. But in terms of that aspect of the Florida State offense, of Castellanos turning broken play, big pass rush, stepping up, I think Miami is as well suited as you can imagine. Anybody this side of Ohio State, I guess, is well suited to stop that as anybody.
And I think Miami's offense, Rece, is perfectly suited to go in on the road. They have a top 5 in the country offensive line. They have Mark Fletcher, who's one of the most numbingly effective backs in the country. And they have a play caller in Shannon Dawson, who we saw him be very patient in that Florida game, right? He doesn't feel the need to take shots. They can pound into the seawall, which is, Mario Cristobal's sort of preferred philosophy of how to run a game. And I feel like keeping the ball from Castellanos, controlling the crowd, controlling the clock, and just pounding their way down the field, and then taking occasional shots with Carson Beck. The game plan suits them for this. And, Florida State's very multiple on defense. I don't know if they've been tested to just line up and stop the run by anybody that they've played yet. Obviously, they were effective against Alabama and were able to get off the field. Now, some of that was because they ran a little bit of a stack. So I think, Miami is going to be simple and linear in how they run this game, and it will be up to Florida State to see if they can find some resistance.
You think back in the history of the game, and I was doing some looking back and making sure you have all the years clarified in my mind. Or the number of everybody knows the missed field goals, but there was a game really when this rivalry arrived, Pete, was really 1987. That was when Miami won a championship by then. Florida State was still looking for that last step to get over the hump of the championship. And, Bobby Bowden really had it rolling. And there was a 1987 game. They were both in the top 4 in the nation. Hurricanes came from 16 down in the fourth quarter, took the lead. Florida State tied it, and Bobby Bowden went for 2 to win it. And this was before all of the wide rights. Mm-hmm. Remember, it's 1987. Yep. Wide right one was 91. Florida State went for 2, didn't get it. And the reason why was Bobby Bowden said he changed his mind because he said, we'd already missed 3 kicks on the day. I was afraid he'd miss another one, so, this has a history of the bizarre, the unexpected, the pressure, just, the overwhelming pressure that is placed particularly on kickers. And then that thing started feeding on itself for Florida State kickers. Guys who were good kickers previously almost became unglued for a while if they didn't come through in this rivalry. The stakes and the theater will be enormous Saturday night in Tallahassee, and we'll make picks later on in the podcast. But I think you can deduce, as much as I think of Florida State, and I think a lot of them, I think they're really good. Norvell's done a great job turning things around, new coordinators, all of that. I think Miami. I'm going to pick Miami when we do it officially later in the podcast, unless you give me some breaking news between now and then that changes my mind. I think Miami's really good. The thing, this is not. I don't think Miami's going to be perfect. I don't think they're invincible. I don't think they're unbeatable. This is not the kind of game they don't show up for. Yeah. What you have to worry about is that sleepy noon start. They should win almost in some ways, even though it was intense, a little bit what might have happened to Florida State last Friday night. Even though Virginia's improved, Florida State probably felt pretty good about its chances to go in and just flex the muscle, show the spear on the side of the headgear, and waltz out with a victory. Didn't work out that way.
They got Louisville at home on a Friday. That game jumped out to me in the middle of the month when I looked at their schedule. They're at SMU and then at Virginia Tech, which is just the kind of goofy interim coach game that we could see all of a sudden being something in the thicket of the fourth quarter. And there'd still be a good crowd in Blacksburg. God bless those crowds in Blacksburg, by the way. They're still showing up for Virginia Tech. Like, I give them a lot of credit. I don't think this Miami team is going to go on like an undaunted march to destiny. There will be rakes to step on, to use one of your favorite phrases, Rece.
Yeah, well, it may be that one, because as I look at that, Pete, SMU needs to be way better than it is right now if that's going to be a problem.
Yes.
The rest of it was quite
Pitt?
manageable.
What about
I mean,
Pitt?
yeah. Well, hey, look, you know what? I should have known already in the preseason that I looked at all the stuff Pitt had coming back, quarterback coming back, Desmond Reed, and I know he's been banged up, all the pass rushers. You know what? Although that would kind of be vintage Pitt, not do what I said. Yeah. Hey, look at all that talent. Yeah. Maybe they'll sneak around and sneak in with that last spot in the playoff. It'll be more like lose 4 and then ruin it for somebody else. That's more the way it goes.
Nice cold day in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. It's happened before. Happened to Miami in 2017 in a lot of ways. When we continue on the College Game Day podcast, we'll turn our attention to revenge trying to be served up. Best cold, I'm told. We'll continue right after this. Welcome back to the College Game Day podcast. College Game Day goes to Tuscaloosa this week. Vanderbilt and Alabama. I mean, who would have thought that Vandy and Alabama would be a big enough stage, have a big enough presence on the national platform to merit us going there? But boy, it's a fascinating game. The situation is very much like a season ago. Alabama had a defining win against Georgia. And then the next week they went to Nashville and Diego Pavia made play after play after play after play. And Vanderbilt tore down goalposts, threw them in the Cumberland River. I think I like to know my rivers, but I believe that's the proper river running through downtown Nashville. And since then, Vandy's taken off. I mean, Vandy wins this game, Pete. You have to look at them, even though their schedule is tough. You've got to look at them as a threat to make it to the SEC championship game.
Absolutely. I think Vandy, we can say safely today, is a playoff contender. And if they go 2-0 in the SEC, I think it's safe to say they're an SEC contender. Now, look, it's a tall task to go win in Tuscaloosa. We know that. I dug in a little bit on Vanderbilt this week as part of an assignment, Rece. It was interesting to me. I just wanted to get a sense of like how talented they are. They are clearly exponentially more talented than they were 2 or 3 seasons ago when they were lagging. Because I want to say in 2023, they did not win a league game. And then they came last year with Pavia, with obviously Tim Beck, the offensive coordinator, came from New Mexico State, Jerry Kill, and they sort of imported the offense as the trend has come in college football, and we're able to obviously make a lot of noise in the league. So I called around. They are not like unbelievably NFL talented. I was told by a couple scouts who've gone through there, they're probably going to get 3 guys drafted. The tight end and maybe a couple, Eli Stowers, who's very good. A good comp for him is Evan Ingram. Maybe not the best blocker in the world, but you can split him out. And he's a former quarterback, right? Like he's not,
right,
he's not a nose in the guy.
He started ahead of Jackson Arnold. Now, young Jackson Arnold in high school, but that's how highly regarded he was as a quarterback.
No, he was a good quarterback. And then I think he went A&M to New Mexico State to play, and then he switched positions. He'll be a 3rd, 4th round draft pick. Like he's a very real prospect, could be the first team all league tight end. He's excellent. And then there's a couple guys on defense, who are very good players. Fontenette, the safety who came from TCU, is considered a good player. They've got a grad student, Miles Capers, coming off the edge. They have a couple guys who will be considered draft picks. Martell Height is a corner. He's only a junior. He plays both ways. He's one of their better athletes. But this is not your typical, we always say double-digit NFL players means postseason, right? In the 14 playoff, you could be pretty certain you'd be right in the thick if you had double-digit. This is just not that. So the credit to Vanderbilt is this. The sum is better than the parts. They play well together collectively. One coach who studied them this year told me they're almost like a military academy because they have such great cohesion, such great execution, and such a threat from the run. Now, they do throw the ball. It's not a pure analogy, but just from the synchronicity and execution standpoint, that's their superpower. Their superpower is their togetherness and collectiveness combined with the upgraded talent that's come in the last 2 years. They've been able to keep that ethos and push forward and become become a threat. They're top 21 in defense and top 20 in offense in the country. Most teams you see top 20 defense, top 20 offense are contenders.
Mm-hmm. I think they're really good. I also feel like this is their first real test. They haven't played a strong offense. They haven't seen anything like that they're going to see from Alabama. I anticipate this being a pretty high-scoring game. Now, Alabama's got good defensive pieces, but if you looked at the difficulty that Alabama had against Tommy Castellanos, getting him on the ground, Castellanos is good, and I don't mean to throw shade at him at all. He's not as good as Diego Pavia. And I don't think he is quite as elusive as crafty. Pavia has improved this year as a pure passer.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that Alabama, and they also have some injuries in the pass rush area and up front. I don't know that they're particularly well equipped to deal with the secondary play if the first one breaks down. And also, they really got cut up a year ago on the option-based plays and the variations off the options. And, does that change? You don't see it a lot. You can't really replicate it in practice, and at least not to the same level of expertise and speed. I think in addition to coming off of the emotional win over Georgia, and I know Alabama will be more ready emotionally this time, they may have some matchup problems.
Yeah.
Just when Vanderbilt has the ball, especially. Vanderbilt is definitely going to have some matchup problems when Alabama has it. But I think that is going to cut both ways. I think we're going to see some points Saturday afternoon in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, and we'll see a lot of smoke, eye candy, whatever you want to call it. Vanderbilt moves, shifts, sends things. They run misdirection like it's direction. Like they are constantly going to make sure Alabama's defense, which did not look particularly disciplined against Florida State, is disciplined. It is an unbelievable test. I don't think Kane Womack, the defense coordinator at Alabama, is going to be sleeping much this week. And the one thing that talking to defensive coaches who played them this year is they said Pavia makes the right decision every single time. He's not a 4-2 athlete. He obviously doesn't throw it great. But the difference between him and Castellanos, in my opinion, is he is going to make the right decision. And that is so critical when you're running one of those execution-based offenses, that he's going to beat you here as much as anywhere else.
Well, the other thing, too, for Vanderbilt from a defensive perspective, they can certainly count on Alabama, playing pretty vanilla, going straight forward, no misdirection. They would never throw it to a tackle. They would never send the flow all the way one way and then reverse course and throw it to a back out of the backfield on third down with the game on the line. They would never do anything like that.
Go back to the Caden Proctor play. Has one play ever changed the narrative about a team as much as that play has for Alabama? I mean, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic.
No, I know.
It just marked a shift. It marked a shift to we're creative, we're fun, we're bruising, we're going to flex on Georgia in Athens. To me, that play was the spirit of the Kalen DeBoer we saw at Washington. Right, not that he threw the tackle all the time, but Kalen DeBoer was out there slinging. He had an NAIA soul in a Pac-12 coach's headset.
Saturday night, Pete, going back to the wedding, and I've had to go back and watch all of these games again. So Saturday night, rehearsal dinner, welcome party for all the people from out of town. And I might have checked some scores from time to time, but I wasn't, I missed my daughter's wedding. First time in, I don't know, maybe my whole life.
Yeah. You're not watching college football on a Saturday
college
night.
football on a Saturday night. But we got back to the house, and it was like fourth quarter, 2 screens going, Penn State, Oregon on one, Alabama, Georgia on the other.
Nirvana, I call it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And my son, who happened to be living in Seattle the year that that Washington went to the national championship game.
I remember standing with them on the sideline at the Oregon game.
Exactly. Yeah. Followed them, closely. When the play came before that decisive third down play that ended up sealing the game for Alabama, Christopher said, "You know what, Dad?" He said, "We're about to find out, is Kalen DeBoer Washington version coaching Alabama, or is this, oh, geez, I'm afraid everybody's going to be all ticked off and start yelling for my job, Kalen DeBoer." And then after they ran the misdirection play through it to Jam Miller, Christopher said, "That's Kalen DeBoer." Right. So it was, it was, I hadn't really thought of it that way, but he referenced immediately. He said, "Remember the reverse he ran in a tie game on
Apple Cup,
4th and 1 in the Apple Cup
game on the line. They were at like the minus 31 or something."
Yeah. If they don't get that, Wazoo's in field goal range, and they're gonna kick a field goal likely at the end of the game and win the thing. And they run a end around, whatever.
Dunze, I think, right?
Yeah, it was Roma Dunze. He ran a little end around thing, and
that play was diabolical. We talked about that play the whole season. I mean, that was one of the all-time play calls. But that's what I mean by the NAIA soul. This is a guy who's won a lot of games, figured a lot of things out. So, yeah, great call by Chris Davis. Hearing him speak at the wedding, you better watch your back, man. He might be after you.
After his speech at the wedding, Pollock texted me and said, "Don't follow that dude." So no, it was great. Let's tell before we go to commercial break real quick. Let's hit on Texas and Florida. Yeah. This is a big defensive test for Arch Manning. Mm-hmm. We know what kind of defense Texas has. Florida's getting some weapons back. Everybody feels like it's a fait accompli that Billy Napier is done. But if he's not, if he is going to be Rasputin, if he is going to be my favorite, you can't get rid of him, NFL coach of all time, Wayne Fontes. If he's going to be that, it has to start Saturday.
Yes.
They have to beat Texas.
Yes.
I don't like the whole must-win thing because, they don't cancel the season, and I guess in theory they could lose and win the rest of them. But it almost feels as if you're going to do it, you've got to have an earthquake-type victory, and it needs to come Saturday against Texas.
Yeah. If you look where Billy Napier sits right now, just from the most basic metric possible is win percentage. He's won 47% of his games right now, which is 22% below Dan Mullen's winning percentage. And he got fired with winning 69% of his games right now. So he's just simply not won enough football games. Like it's not that complicated. He's had generally, other than a couple incidents on the field this year, a good culture there. The players have been out of trouble. Like they like Billy Napier day to day. It's just he just hasn't won enough football games. And the stunning part about this season for me, Rece, has been the regression of DJ Lagway. He just hasn't been question. He just hasn't been very good. And I would love to hear Dan Orlovsky or one of our dialed in analysts look at it, footwork, whatever it is. Some of it I think can be attributed to him simply not practicing. So there's some rust there. He's been dealing with the calf. I think he had the shoulder in the spring that kept him out, and he looks like a guy who hasn't developed much, because of that. So he needs to take a leap forward here quick. Again, in August, I would have told you this is the matchup of the two quarterbacks who we'll probably be talking about as the potential number one pick for the 2027 draft. Well, that conversation can be tabled for a while because neither of those guys have played particularly well.
The debut, too, if you want to look for potential thing that might change for Florida, the debut of their freshman wide receiver, Dallas Wilson, who lit up the spring game. And he had 10 catches, $195, 2 touchdowns. I know. I got it. Spring game. Florida's in desperate need of somebody like that. I think he hurt a foot in camp, and and Billy said this week having him back is a big deal. His Texas defense hasn't had any problems, sort of lost in all of the hand-wringing over Arch's development and early season play has been the fact that Texas defense is really, really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
I think people are sleeping on Texas a little bit. Like, there's no shame in going to the Horseshoe and, losing by one score because of a couple questionable in-game decisions. It might have been, a different thing. So I just think, the prism of Texas has been through that loss and the struggles of Arch. But the reality is 1-22, Texas is as good as anybody in the country.
Yeah. And are you really willing to say Arch isn't going to get it going?
Yeah.
And, he look at that guy he's got on the sideline calling the plays for him.
Yeah.
They'll get it fixed.
Yeah.
But it'll be a challenge in the swamp on Saturday. Back with more, a couple of peeks ahead to the weekend coming up, the first Saturday in October when the College GameDay Podcast rolls on. College GameDay Podcast rolls on. Sneaky undefeated teams. Texas Tech at Houston. Both teams 4-0. Both teams have won their only Big 12 games so far. You said earlier, Pete, you like rivalries where teams don't like each other.
Mm-hmm.
Low key, these two don't like each other much. They had a fight in the stands when they played in 2021. There was an old school game in the 70s dubbed the most important game in Texas Tech history with the Cotton Bowl on the line. And, Houston was able to prevail. They've got a little history. This is the biggest Texas Tech Houston game in a really long time. Ooh. And just to be candid, Houston is improved. We both love Willie Fritz. They're much improved. But I think Texas Tech is legit. Doesn't mean they're going to walk in and just automatically win the game. I think Texas Tech is legit in the Big 12. I think they're a contender. I don't think I'm there with Houston yet.
I think that's really fair. Baron Morton will be back after he took that tough hit in the Utah game and get replaced by Will Hammond. And I think Texas Tech has less leeway, Rece, than most power conference teams because their non-conference was Pine Bluff, Kent State, Oregon State. Right. So as you go through, they play at Houston, they play at Arizona State, they play BYU at home. They have good games left, but they are not one of these teams that has maybe given themselves a cushion to stub their toe. I'm not saying they have to go perfect or undefeated, but I do think that when you look at the prism of their schedule, there are only so many opportunities for bigger, high-profile wins. This would count as one of them on Saturday.
You know that there are two teams that made the playoff last year playing each other on Saturday, right?
I probably do know that.
Boise State and Notre Dame.
Yes.
You want to talk about a game that's flying under the radar.
Fair enough.
And a chance for Spencer Danielson to say, wait a minute. Now, they're going to have a hard time overcoming the magnitude of that loss to whoever ends up winning the American. But they can upset Notre Dame somehow and basically knock Notre Dame out of the playoff chase. Then maybe all of a sudden, a little attrition in the American, you might be in good shape.
Give Spencer Danielson a lot of credit, Rece. After they laid a goose egg on offense, essentially, in Tampa in that opening weekend, they have quietly come around. They hung 51 on Eastern Washington, 49 on Air Force, 47 on a pretty good App State team that had a few skins on the wall this year. So they have found themselves. They have found their stride. They're 20th in the country in rushing. They've kind of behind Cage Casey, their big left tackle, have identified again in the run game. So I'm just, Notre Dame hasn't made much easy this year until that Fayetteville game. So I don't think this is going to be any kind of cakewalk for Notre Dame. If your only snapshot of Boise was that opening Thursday, you're mistaken.
You know what? I'm going to leave you with this, Pete. In the Boise State Notre Dame game, I don't know if Boise State defensive back Jaden Mickey's going to be able to play. He suffered a concussion against Appalachian State. If that name sounds familiar, it's because he played at Notre Dame, former Notre Dame player. Yeah. And if you want to know why, as a parent, you would want them trying to recruit for Notre Dame, but why you would say, I will send my son to play for Marcus Freeman. I'll tell you why. He was asked about Mickey, and he had called and checked on him and the whole thing. And Freeman had a great quote. He said, these guys are not cars. You don't rent them for a couple of years, and then when they leave, that's it. You sold it, it's done. He said, these are relationships that last forever. He says, just like you treat them just like you would every one of your players. You have a lifelong relationship. So he was very concerned about Jaden, his health, and Spencer Danielson knows how badly Mickey wants to play in this game. They will protect him from himself, but I hope that his health allows him to do so, because I know that would be a special moment for him to be able to go back and go there. And hey, look, man, I still believe Notre Dame's really good. Notre Dame's lost 2 games, last play of the game, to 2 teams that might win the national championship. Might. I mean, I might be a little over my skis with A&M saying that, but I mean, they're undefeated. It looked like a top 5 team right now through September. So I'm not out on Notre Dame by any stretch of the imagination. But Boise will show up. They'll show up Saturday, and it'll be a lot of fun. Thank you for watching the College Game Day Podcast. You can continue on. Pete and I will make some futile predictions, I'm sure, for the games coming up this week on the extended play version on YouTube. We'll ask you to join us. We'll have EJ Manuel join us a little bit there too and talk more about the upcoming Miami-Florida State game. We appreciate you checking out the College Game Day Podcast. Back on the College Game Day Podcast, Pete and I pleased to be joined by one of the greatest players ever to grace the Florida State uniform, EJ Manuel. You see him on Saturdays in the studio. You might actually get to hear him talk on our podcast when you sit next to Joey Galloway. Sometimes there's no way you can get a word in edgewise. But EJ, we're delighted to have you. And also, EJ, a host of the ACC Network Football Podcast, and I imagine a major storyline on that particular program will be the showdown between the Seminoles and the Hurricanes on Saturday night.
Yeah, Rece and Pete, thank you guys for having me. And first and foremost, very excited to be doing this podcast. Myself, Roddy Jones. Fans can see it on ACC Network on Mondays and Wednesdays at 5 p.m. And then also you can listen to it on all the podcast platforms out there, Spotify, Apple, Pandora, whatever it is where you find your podcast. So it's been a lot of fun, man, obviously covering the ACC, but certainly getting a chance this year to cover college football on the national landscape as well.
EJ, Pete and I talk about this a lot. When you step into this role, you have to take a step back. But if you don't care, especially you guys who played, and you were a brilliant player, if you don't care about your alma mater, if you don't care about I don't know why you do this. You just have to learn how to put it in perspective, which you've already done, and you've done it beautifully. All of those disclaimers offered for a Seminole, what's the first visceral, emotional reaction that you get when you think about the Miami Hurricanes?
I think the main thing is more respect. That's the main word that comes back to me, because I think to my time at Florida State, Miami was pretty good. They had Ja'Cory Harris and Sean Spence, Lamar Miller, guys who, I ended up getting to know as I got older throughout my college career and then certainly in the NFL. But I think for us at FSU, and I'm sure the Canes would say the same thing, it's about respect. That game is about bragging rights. That game is about, in-state respect. When we come down to South Beach during spring break, nobody's going to come and say nothing to us. Or when they come up to Tallahassee or come through Jacksonville or something like that and they run into some Seminole fans, nobody will say anything to them. So I think going back to those games and those matchups that I played in, and I'll be honest, any game I started against Miami, I never lost. So very proud of that. Yeah. And I live in South Florida now, and I can look to my right. Well, funny enough, Jarvis Landry lives next door to me, so not my right because he's an LSU guy. But to my left are all Canes fans. And so when I walk outside, especially this week, I'm walking around proud, even though we took an L last week to UVA. So it's all about respect.
And someone who has such a respect for that rivalry, EJ, there have been big meetings of these teams, but this is one of the bigger ones maybe in the last decade, just with the ebbs and the flows of these programs. Is it gratifying to you to see this game on a pedestal like this?
It is. Look, I think this is a game that should be, anonymous with college football in the sense of one of those big rivalries. You have Michigan, Ohio State. You have a bunch of others, Alabama, Auburn at the end of the year. Florida State, but this is one of those two, Miami and Florida State, no matter where it is on the schedule. And I think the fact that both teams are relevant in the national scheme, I think that's a big deal, certainly for the ACC, because that was probably the biggest purpose years ago when Miami joined the ACC, same with Florida State. And it's just funny that that's never come to fruition with them getting to the ACC championship game. So maybe this is the year, but ultimately I think this is a huge weekend for both teams, but a little bit more for Florida State because of what happened last week.
I said earlier in the pod, EJ, and I don't mean to take anything away from Virginia, but with what I said, I did take something away from Virginia. I said there was a little bit of a fluky nature to the win. Now, not that they didn't play great. They played their tails off and competed like crazy, and they made winning plays, and they deserved to win the game. But whether it was the bobble or the number of turnovers, Florida State 500 yards and found a way to lose. you mentioned the stakes, how it increases it. Yet I also feel like, you speaking from a quarterback perspective, I feel like those defensive ends at Miami are sort of uniquely positioned to be able to give Castellanos much more trouble than your average defense in terms of improvising and making plays running the ball.
It's a good point. And look, I'll push back real quick, Rece. I do think I think UVA earned that victory. I mean,
no, I do
Florida
too.
State,
but I agree. I'm not. Yeah, I probably should say it differently. I agree.
Yeah.
But a lot of things went their way.
Sure.
So,
and exactly. Yeah. And sometimes that's how the ball rolls. You know, you turn the ball over early in the game. Chandler Morris has 3 interceptions, but Florida State, again, had their turnovers, but he played great. Talking about Morris at the end. Mm-hmm. You know, you look at UM's entire front line, honestly, Rece. Like, I think you have, of course, Akeem Mesidor and Ruben Bain. Those are the key guys, but there's some interior guys, Muhammad Toure, some linebackers that can fill the gaps as far as, you know, just stopping the run. You know, it'll be interesting to see how Gus Malzahn, the offensive coordinator for Florida State, tries to get Tommy out of the pocket so he can still have some clean throwing lanes. And, you know, I think one thing Tommy showed us all, reminded us all too, though, he can throw it from the pocket. You know, some of those throws that Deuce Robinson caught, especially those back shoulder throws in the second and third quarter once their offense got rolling, was from the pocket. And so I tell you what, man, it's going to be a good-on-good matchup, and I think it truly comes down to which offensive line can control the lines of scrimmage, because that's something that UVA was able to do against Florida State's defense. And I would assume Miami's probably licking their chops considering they have a really strong offensive line too.
Let me step back a little bit, EJ, because I think part of the reason this game is so intriguing is because of the depths Florida State hit so suddenly last year. You and I spent some time together in Dublin at Florida State practice. We went out to dinner. If I had said to you last year in August in Dublin, Ireland, that Florida State was going to go 2-10, you would have like shipped me back, like for health reasons, to the States, I would think. So as a Seminole, as a, you know, a beacon of your era, right? You're on TV every week talking about them. Like, what did your text messages look like every Saturday as the season went on?
That's a great question, Peter. They weren't pretty. They weren't pretty. It was a lot of me trying to talk friends off ledges and trying to console. Look, I got a bunch of buddies, mainly my golf buddies, who we obviously meet up every week and try to get out and play. And they're just like, how the hell do we lose to this team and then we lose to this team? And that was, again, more last year. And the cool part was there was a lot of optimism coming into this season. So obviously when Florida State played well against Alabama and got that victory, that made a lot of my friends smile. And some of those text messages I wasn't getting throughout the summer started to come back. But yeah, it was tumultuous. It was really hard to see. And truly, guys, I think I've said this to both of you. I've never seen Florida State lose that many games. And 2-10 can never be a part of Florida State football ever again. And I know Coach Norvell knows that too.
You know, that's an extreme. Florida State one year to the next and back this year. Yet it also, in many ways, seems like it's going to be a bit of a lesson, if not a microcosm, of what people can expect in this era of college football. You know, I know we talk about it on Game Day a lot, EJ, that there has to be some thread of culture that stays within a program over the long haul. But in many respects, the real art form in this moment in time is establishing a culture for this year, this team quickly, and hoping you can hold on to it through the course of a 3 or 4 month season, because you're just going to have to do it again next year with a whole new cast of characters in virtually every case, it seems.
Yeah, that is the case. And, you know, that's not something I dealt with when I was playing college football, because you signed up to go somewhere. We didn't have transfer portal, certainly didn't have NIL. We were broke, but you didn't have that opportunity to go anywhere, Rece. And so you kind of stuck it out, and you knew the guys that you were looking to your right and to your left and front and behind with. That's who you're going to roll with for the next 3, 4, or 5 years. And now in college football, I think it's about retaining talent. Coach Norvell was able to do that in some points of last year. But I think the other part that's different for Florida State is not even so much talent. I think it's just personalities. You got real dogs on this team now, too. And I thought that was something that we missed last year. Because when I played there, and again, I hate to go back to my day and all that kind of stuff, but my run and Ponder's run and Jameis's run, like as quarterbacks, we had other alpha dogs on the team that would speak up. I think about Telvin Smith, LaMarcus Joyner, Chris Thompson. Not only were they great players, but they were great leaders. You know, guys that would speak up and kind of grab you by the collar, so to speak, and say, hey, man, get your stuff together. And I think this Florida State team has that. So I'm very excited to see how they come out this week, because last week was tumultuous. You got to snap and clear and move forward to the next week.
You were a great leader, great player. How would you compare the best speech you ever gave to your team to the best speech Jameis has ever given to any of his teams.
Yeah, I like to claim that Jameis learned from me. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, is that right? Well, let's hear it.
Nah. Well,
hey,
look,
DJ,
Jameis
if you're going to do it big, let's do it big then.
All
right?
Big thing. So look, it's funny you say that. So Jameis was a freshman my senior year, and I used to get up before we would go out. Telvin Smith, also one of our linebackers, another leader on the team, would get up and say some things. But I usually got up and I'd give a quick pregame speech. And I want to say the one that I remember most was before the Orange Bowl, my last year there, last game. And we played Northern Illinois, and their quarterback, I think Jordan Lynch, had talked, some trash throughout the week. And I was like, yeah, you talk to the wrong guys. You know what I mean? The wrong group of guys be throwing some shade. But look, Jameis is pretty good because he also has the figurative, like the W's and all that kind of stuff in the NFL, which has been fun. So I'd have to say they're probably even. But Jameis is definitely – I'll say this. Once he's done playing, whether he works with us on TV, I think Jameis could also be a pastor because I think he kind of has that vibe as like a pastor that can get and move people's hearts for sure. I love Jameis.
Let me dial in on one thing, EJ. I know obviously you're a quarterback. You talk more about offense. But to me, the most stunning part about Florida State last year was their defense. The defense just no-showed. They had plenty of talent. You see it dispersed at other places playing well. You see some of it in the NFL now. Schematically, Tony White brought in kind of a new vibe and some new schemes. Just why has that defense been transformed this season, with the personnel changes and then the schematic changes?
I'd say it's fit too, Pete. When you look at Earl Little Jr., who's kind of like a middle linebacker, but he plays safety for Florida State. He's kind of in that like rover position right there in the middle of the field. And Tony White, has that 3-5-2 or whatever the defense thing is. But I think for the fit, that's probably been the most important part for this football team. You got guys that are in positions that they can now make plays. I think you're utilizing your speed. I think you certainly have some long range defensive backs. Come back to this season. You saw them have a couple picks, Edwin Joseph, Elijah Rawls, and those kind of guys to come up and make some big plays in that UVA game. But I also think it's mentality. I think guys have kind of gotten tired of getting embarrassed last season, and that's why you saw what you saw in week 1 against Alabama. And I think, again, now that was really their first adverse moment in the season. And so as far as just X's and O's, I think this is about heart. This is about respect. This is about who you want to be remembered as a Florida State football team. So you can't start the season extremely strong and then have this one, kind of jaw punch right here. You got to recover. That's a part of football.
What's the most compelling and significant non-overturned tractor trailer rubbernecking as it will be in Chapel Hill, aside from the Clemson Carolina game of dueling overturned Freightliners, which would never happen with Old Dominion Freightline, one nation's number 1 LTL carrier. Aside from that game, what's the most fascinating game in the ACC outside of Miami and Florida State?
I spend a ton of Sunday and Monday trying to get caught up with these ACC games, and I'd say the biggest one is probably Virginia-Louisville, just because of how Virginia got a huge top 10 victory last week. I think for them, can you parlay that into like real national respect? Because even how you mentioned it, Rece, with Florida State kind of in quotes, and I think a lot of people think this, like Florida State lost that game. And look, your quarterback throws 3 interceptions, all this kind of stuff. I just felt like this was a team that they've kind of crossed that line where they believe that they can win. And you got older guys, veteran guys who played a lot of college football there. Louisville the same way. They got their first victory in the ACC last week against Pitt on the road, hostile environment. And it's funny, Louisville's actually a 6.5-point favorite. I'm looking at it here on ESPN.com in this matchup. I'd lean Virginia, guys, because I think right now they're playing with house money. They're playing with belief. They're playing with, hey, we just beat a top 10 team. We just beat Florida State. And, I can remember playing against big teams in the NFL. If we beat them, that put a jetpack on our back moving forward in the next couple of weeks. And so I'm very curious to see how they come out. But ultimately, I'd lean Virginia right now just because they're being the hot hand.
I'm going to give you a magic wand, EJ. Fix Clemson.
Ooh, man. That's good, Pete. I think Clemson just needs some good things to happen to them. You know what? Like, I think they ran into a tough LSU defense specifically. Obviously, we've seen LSU's offense struggle a little bit, but they're still, going to be in the hunt. I've seen them run into a Georgia Tech team that truly, guys, that Toro alert, which is the last field goal right before the end of the game, they knock it through. And they did that at Florida State the year before in Ireland. We were there for that.
Oh, yeah.
So I think they've just run into some tough matchups and teams that were really good in situations. And when you play good teams, that's how you can win or that's how you can lose if you don't handle those situations. So to fix them, Pete, man, I think the biggest thing is offensive line. They got to protect a little bit better. And I know as a quarterback, we're not supposed to say that, right? But like for Cade, and even some of the tapes I've done in the past few weeks, like there's free runners. There's guys who are coming into the backfield and Cade's trying to go through 1, 2, and 3 for his his progressions. And that's hard to do when you start feeling like you're a bit exposed from the defense. So I would say maybe fix that offense line and also run the football too. I know Adam Randall was supposed to be this running back, and he's had a 100-yard game maybe once or twice this season, but that's not his natural position. So I think he's still also learning how to kind of fill blocks and kind of feed into that as well. So run the football and protect the passer for Clemson.
Who's the best team in the country?
Great question. I'll go Oregon. I like Oregon.
Really?
Yeah, I like Oregon.
Why?
I think you can easily say Ohio State. You could throw you could throw Ole Miss in the conversation. I think Ole Miss is playing great football right now. But I'll say Oregon because, man, look, you go into a hostile environment like that, and I know it wasn't the prettiest game in the first 35 minutes of it. It was 3-3 for a long time. So for us football fans, not a lot of scoring. But I saw a lot of great defense. I saw defenses get off the field on third down. I saw teams get chances to extend drives, but then suddenly get stunted with a turnover, something just not happen well for your offense. I just think they're a fully balanced team. I certainly love their quarterback, Dante Moore. The fact that he's gotten a chance to sit last year behind Dylan Gabriel, who's now an NFL quarterback, who I believe is going to get his first start this week, is certainly paying dividends. You got receivers, you got running backs, you have an offensive line, you have defensive line. Mateo Uiagalelei, he had a sack in that game at Penn State. So to me, guys, if you could pass a test like that, whether it's pretty or whether it's ugly, and you find a way to win, and you got a dog as a head coach. Did y'all see how juiced up Dan Lannon was after that game, man? I mean, like that guy cares, and those guys are going to run through a brick wall for him. So I throw Oregon in that conversation and be the best team in the country right now.
EJ, always a pleasure talking to you, man. Keep up the great work, and look forward to talking to you soon. All right, Pete, great to talk to EJ Manuel. Yeah. We're going to go a little up-tempo here because we spent a little time talking about various things over the course of the podcast. We'll make our 6-pack of picks a little bit quicker. Let's start in the swamp, Texas and Florida. The Gators get it turned around?
They don't, Rece. I don't think the Gators are going to score more than 10 points. I just think Texas figures out a way to win. They muster enough offense. It'll be interesting to see how healthy their tailbacks are. There's some uncertainty around there, but I think Texas figures out a way led by that defense.
I think the game will go exactly the same way. I think it'll be relatively low scoring. It'll be very low scoring for Florida. Texas walks out with a win and maybe even feeling slightly better about the offense because that Gator defense is legit. Penn State, after the massive disappointing loss to Oregon, hard-fought game, they go on the road against UCLA, which just seems hapless right now. Do the Nittany Lions sleepwalk through it, or do they make a statement?
Well, they'll have a home crowd at the Rose Bowl, considering how many Penn State grads live in LA. I hope Penn State uses this to just find some juju and open things up. That offense has been very un-Kotelnicki-like. It has been flat and vanilla, and with the weapons they have and the quarterback they have, they need to find some juice. But I do think they roll. I don't think it's close.
Yeah, I think Penn State wins that game easily. Probably not a lot more that needs to be said about that, given UCLA's current straitened circumstances. College Game Day will be in Tuscaloosa for Vanderbilt and Alabama. Now, there is one little piece of history. We think back to the win that Vanderbilt had last year. It's very much like the year that Hugh Freeze and Ole Miss beat Alabama and Oxford and then came back the next year and beat them in Tuscaloosa in a wild game. Can Vandy turn the trick and go back-to-back against the Tide?
I mean, it would be unbelievable theater to see Vandy turn the trick. I just think we saw enough verve from Alabama in Athens last week that it's hard to think if they are blocking that well, especially up front, and playing that well on defense, stopping the run, that Vandy would be able to find a way to outscore them. So I think Alabama wins a close game, something like 21-20.
I think there's going to be more scoring than that. I don't know if it'll be quite 40-35 like last year, but I will say that Pavia breaks the pocket, breaks down, makes some plays. But in the end, man, Ty Simpson is legit.
He's
if
slinging.
not for a man called Jeremiah Smith, Jeremy Bernard would be a Bolitnikoff candidate. And he still is a candidate, don't get me wrong, but I mean, he's having an elite year. I think Alabama wins. I don't think it's easy, and I don't think it's quite goes down to nail-biting territory at the end, but there will be anxious moments of, oh no, here comes Pavia again among the Crimson Tide crowd on Saturday afternoon. Saturday night, Miami and Florida State.
I think Miami can control the game, and I think they win a low-scoring game. I think this is like a 17-10. I think Castellanos struggles against a higher class of defense, and I think that Miami sort of shortens the game, runs the ball, kind of uses the smash mouth identity that they've found, and Carson Beck can make the plays on third down.
I think we're going to have to find some games we disagree on. I think that Miami is built to be able to limit what the Florida State offense can do. They're not going to shut them down. I mean, Gus Malzahn is always going to find a way to pop plays, and they will. But I think Miami, I've got Miami ranked number one. Doesn't mean they're head and shoulders above everybody else in the country. I don't think that. I don't think they leave the state of Florida until November. Mm-hmm. They certainly leave a comfortable environment this week, and it will be very uncomfortable and incumbent on Carson Beck not to make big mistakes, to generate more energy in the stadium, to give Florida State short fields with that running game. Can't do it. Make them go the long way. Give Bain and Mesidor time to operate and time to make them work their way down the field. And I think Miami ends up winning the game and covering. Big 12 game matching undefeated teams. One I believe in, one I don't. I think Texas Tech takes care of Houston. I think they roll past Houston on Saturday.
I think they win. I don't think they roll. If we're going to start disagreeing, I think Houston is a crafty enough team, and Connor Wegman has played well enough. And in the Houston defense under Austin Armstrong, Rece is really, there's been a pretty significant turnaround there. So I think this ends up being a little bit of a scrappy game in H-Town, but I think Tech figures out a way to win.
Yeah. And then our deep cut game and the last chance we have to go in opposite directions. Washington, which acquitted itself well for the most part against Ohio State. There were just clutch plays at the end, red zone problems created by Ohio State's excellent defense is what it seemed like more than anything else. And now here you've got Maryland. Maryland undefeated under Mike Locksley. They've got a sensational freshman quarterback that nobody's really had a chance to see in a big game yet, Malik Washington. I'd say this qualifies as a big win. Maryland already has a Big Ten win, trying to go 2-0 in the conference.
Yeah, so credit Mike Locksley, Rece. This is one of the only times in this portal era where I can remember a team turning itself around through conventional freshman recruiting, right? Obviously, Malik Washington's come in and maybe been the best freshman in the country so far this year. Certainly best freshman quarterback. He's high in that conversation. But their defensive ends, Sidney Stewart and Zahir Mathis, have been just as revelatory. So give Locks credit for zigging. Everyone else is going to the portal. He said, we're going to get some 5-stars and we're going to run them out and they're going to play big. All that said, I think that Damon Williams and the crew can go there and run around and figure out a way to win. So I'm going to take Washington in a close game.
Pete, you know what? I'm going to go with the physical hangover factor. You play against teams like Ohio State, Georgia, in the past, Alabama, and I would say that's probably still the thing. People would talk about how it takes you a week or two to get over it. Factor in then that you're coming all the way across the country to have to play Maryland. You've got a Maryland team that wants to have the opportunity to prove itself. At least it's not a 9 a.m. body clock game for the Huskies. And the Huskies have great weapons, and I think they're going to have an outstanding season. Washington, massive struggles on the road last year. Mm-hmm. I'll say the Terps pull the upset, touchdown underdog, and I say Maryland knocks off Washington and gets sort of a shake up the standings. Who's the real sleeper team if there is one in the Big Ten, because there's so many juggernauts. And I'll give it to Locks and the Terps and say that they're going to pull the upset.
Let's close with this, Rece. Speaking of massive physical hangovers, on the Monday pod, Dan Wetzel's sources said you had a second glass of whole milk at the reception. You were having so much fun. What was your actual hangover Sunday into Monday from the second glass of whole milk?
Oh, well, we might have celebrated with a little more, but not. There was zero hangover physically. There was some significant emotional hangover on Monday for sure. Significant that still has some lingering effects. How about that? So,
we're trying to get you that Hood milk deal, Rece. You got to lean in a little bit. Come on.
I know it. I had a little whole milk in the coffee this morning. I'll have a glass of whole milk before Perry solves the case tonight, just before bedtime.
Very nice. Very nice.
The whole milk last night was good. Perry, I don't know what happened in the Perry Mason case. I fell asleep, but as I've said many times before, I know people say, "Yeah, don't put TVs in your bedroom," but sometimes nice old school black and white show, not a lot of quick cuts and moves. It's it's very.
It's like a lullaby.
Yeah. That's exactly.
Maybe
what
we'll
it's
start
like.
showing Tegan some Perry Mason. Get her through that night feeding.
That'll do it. That'll do it at least it may not help her. It'll help you.
There you go.
Just make sure she's locked in. You got we called it the boppy, around there. So if you fall asleep, the baby doesn't slip off there, and then you can catch a few winks there. Do not sleep on this Saturday, kids. This is the type of Saturday every year that people say, "Oh, the games are not like last week." Do not sleep. You never know.
Well, remember the Saturday we were in Berkeley, Rece?
Oh yeah,
that was the Alabama, and that day was bananas from opening snap until last call. Like it might have been. I don't have them ranked, but that might have been the craziest Saturday of the year. I remember I went to the Stanford game. Because we were at Cal and the game wasn't until at night. So I went over there and I just remember getting in an Uber. I left at halftime and just staring at my phone being like, is Vanderbilt really going to win this game? Like in the back of an Uber, and the Uber driver's talking to me and I'm just like,
And then that night in the Miami Cal game, though you wouldn't have been able to tell it from the play-by-play man who could barely
he
speak.
sounded hungover.
Now that play-by-play guy had a physical hangover. It was like he'd played Ohio State on Saturday and Georgia on Sunday. That's what it sounded like for him. Yeah. But it was a 35 rallying from 35-10 down to win the game. Miami did. So you never know. That's why we love this. Thanks for listening to the College Game Day Podcast. Download wherever you prefer to get your podcast, or better yet, subscribe, and you never miss a single episode.